welcome back to James Redmond TV and welcome to another Redmond Roundup. Now, there's been a lot of questions and conversations around Jurgen Klopp recently, and a lot of people like to label Jurgen Klopp as a moaner, and not in the sense of, in bed or whatever, in the sense that, Jurgen Klopp is someone who will have his opinion. He's very opinionated, and if he feels that it opposes or gives someone else an advantage, he's more than happy to mention it, right? And I think Jurgen Klopp has always been fine with aligning himself as the underdog manager, at Dortmund, and then the reason why he joined Liverpool. There was even talks about him, he's always denied moves to Bayern Munich. I believe there was a time where Man United was linked with Jurgen Klopp, and he weren't really down with that. So that's why I only raise Jurgen Klopp, as good as he is, he does have his tendency to have a little moan. Now, the same way that, think of your most perfect idol, hero, person you look up to, they will not be perfect and will have their flaws. And I think that's one of Jurgen Klopp's ones where, although it can be very, very funny sometimes, there's other times where it can come across, quite sad or maybe quite desperate in some ways. And I do think that he's making some desperate calls recently. He's had his funny shouts before. There was the COVID season where he mentioned, I believe, about it being rainy. Sounds like tie off AFTV. I don't think he was trying to use it as an excuse, but just to even mention it just didn't sound good. And then fast forward to now, you see the little jibes that he's taken at Chelsea, Newcastle. He even made the statement back in 2016, like, when the game becomes £100 million signings, I won't be a manager no more. I think that's, some of these can be misinterpretations, and then some of them are actual jibes, which people don't like. And then people are going to say, well, why is he moaning? He's got, he comes out and he says things like, okay, we've got all the midfielders we need, or we've got a great squad, and then doesn't go and achieve what he wants to achieve, and then he moans. And I do think that's a very fine thing to mention about Jurgen Klopp. And then to those who are heavily defensive of Jurgen Klopp, don't take that personally and don't feel like you have to defend Klopp on that front. I think if you used to have a very open, transparent conversation with the man, he'd say, sometimes I don't get it right, and sometimes I can overreact and I am over-emotional. And that might be something that can be to his detriment at times, but others it can be his greatest benefit. He's a very emotional manager. The first thing he did was, he made us thought-provoking. Oh no, he was thought-provoking to make us think about being more emotive to the team. Turn from doubters to believers. It'll change the atmosphere in the stadium, and it'll change the outlook we have on the team, and then we can enjoy the process a lot more. So in some ways it can be bad, in some ways it can be brilliant. I would say don't change. Of course, in certain circumstances, I don't think some things need to be said. The reference I gave about the pitch being wet and stuff like that a couple of years ago, I don't think that was necessary. But I also understand sometimes Jurgen Klopp can be misinterpreted in some ways, and then I also know at other times he can take it a little bit too far. The question I want to raise is this moaning good for anyone, and is it good for anything? Because, it's just painting a picture of a manager who can come across quite desperate. And what's the solution? What's the solution to making a manager moan less? It's providing him the things at the football club in which he needs. And if he hasn't got the right people saying the right things to him, which I don't think he does. I think there's examples of recent times where Jurgen Klopp's made himself look very, very silly and stupid. Even when he came out and announced the Caicedo news, I think the club came out and said to Klopp, yeah, you can announce that we've made an agreement with Caicedo. And I believe they made him do this because of the fact that there was so much pressure on FSG. And I think they painted it in a way like, listen, there's a lot of pressure from the fans. You're the guy that they look up to. You're the guy that they'll listen to. I just need you to mention that we've got an agreement with Caicedo, because then this will tell the fans that we're at least trying, which is great. It's amazing that you're trying. I just don't understand. We knew the bid was there. I don't understand why you're putting the manager on the front line announcing this deal. Even though he never said it was complete, he mentioned about it was an agreed deal. And you could see the confusion on Jurgen Klopp's face while he was talking about it. So that's the only reason why I'll sit there and try and give him just that little bit of leeway. And I think it's fair to do so because, it can be taken out of context. And I do think Jurgen Klopp is one of the most hated managers in the country. I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's many people who like Jurgen Klopp. And then I think some people will justify reasons why they don't like him. But it's funny because then there's other managers who have been complacent bitches in the past who are absolutely adored. Jose Mourinho's one of them, for instance. And there's many other managers as well who have been very complacent managers. Louis van Gaal as well, who are adored managers on a worldwide scale. But Jurgen Klopp, I think, just because I do think if people see somebody achieve something in a bit of an unusual manner, the same way Jurgen Klopp did with Dortmund and the way that he has done with Liverpool, what we did with Jurgen should have never been achieved. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to put too much of a thing on Jurgen Klopp's time at Liverpool, but I do think it's deserved. No Premier League in 30 years. Then he goes and wins a Premier League, but then, of course, context matters on why we never got more Premier Leagues. It's because we faced the best team in Premier League history in Manchester City. And I'm talking from a statistical basis. You can have your opinions on, is the 99 treble team better, or is this City team better? I think Pep Guardiola is the best manager, pound for pound, to ever grace the Premier League. Not to take anything away from Sir Alex. Overall, history is very kind to Sir Alex. He is a great manager, an elite manager at that. And I believe he's the greatest the Premier League's ever seen. But in a 5 to 6 year spell, I have never seen a manager do what Pep Guardiola's done. And for Jurgen Klopp to go ahead and not only compete with that team, but be superior to that team at times, is quite sensational to me. 97 points, 99 points, and 92 points. They're 3 90-point seasons in which Jurgen Klopp's had. To put it into context, and this is not to take away from Sir Alex Ferguson at all, his highest ever points tally was 91 points. So Jurgen Klopp's third worst points tally at Liverpool, which is 92, was higher than Sir Alex Ferguson's highest. And then people can throw into the equation, well, listen, James, the teams were better at that point. You had Chelsea, you had Arsenal, you had United. And as much as I rate those teams, them classic teams of Arsenal, Chelsea, United, they were great. We're not going to throw in Liverpool because I don't know if we deserve to be in a top team shout. But what I'll throw in is that, okay, then, well, now the Premier League is the most competitive that it's ever been and has been the case for the past 5 to 6 years. It's just us and City did it so much better than everyone else. It didn't even look like competition. And statistical points tallies prove this. Even those great teams you mentioned couldn't get the points tallies that we could because they couldn't sustain it over a 38-game season the way that Liverpool and City could. We couldn't even draw. You could draw back in the day and that's fine. You can't draw nowadays if you're competing with City. Arsenal fans will attest to this. So it's not me trying to put too much of a light on Jurgen Klopp's thing, but his approach, which sometimes we can disagree with, is an approach that has been effective to play some of the best football we've seen of all time. And how do we say the best football we've seen of all time? Well, it's certainly the most effective. And based on a win percentage, it's one of the best. So there will be the naysayers who say, well, James, trophies mean everything. I agree. Trophies are the solidifying factor to whether you was a winner or whether you was a loser, right? But if we're going to go off a historical basis, we are definitely one of the best second place teams of all time. And if we are going to include context, because there's people with simple brains, they'll say, if you don't have trophies, you're shit. So if you think Jurgen Klopp's shit, you're going to reference things like he's got 1 Premier League, he's got 1 of everything, opposed to double. He hasn't multiplied it, which is a fine argument if you're going to say Pep is better than Jurgen. Jurgen hasn't been able to win the volume of trophies like Pep, therefore Pep is better. Fine. If your premise is trophies, fine. Off that same premise that you're using Pep to be better than Jurgen, on that very same premise, Sir Alex is better than Pep. And on that same premise, Bob Paisley is better than Sir Alex. Bob Paisley won like 19 trophies in 9 years, for goodness sake. But then people will say, well, that was a very long time ago, so that doesn't matter. So the point I'm leading to is people don't care about context. People like to have one simple thing. So for some people, the best manager in the world is trophies. For some people, the best manager in the world is net spend, for instance. You've got a lot of Liverpool fans who think like this. For me, it's about contextualising everything. I don't think Jurgen Klopp's the best manager in the world. I think he's had a shout to be, in a temporary time, the best manager in the world. The same way Benzema has never been constantly the best player in the world, but there was a 12-month spell there where he was by and far and clear, deservedly Ballon d'Or winner, like the best player in the world. That's what I thought with Jurgen. For a 2 or 3 year spell, I said that man right there, right now, can have that conversation of being the best manager in the world. And I think for him to have gotten there with the resources given, and to think and then, be sceptical on what he could have achieved with more resources, I do think that, irregardless of this moaning approach, which I don't agree with, I don't think it's good to see Jurgen Klopp moaning. And if I see if I see my parents moaning, I think it's completely not necessary. If I see people in my family moaning, I don't think it's necessary. I see a lot of couples having arguments, and I'm thinking, what the fuck are you arguing about? Unnecessary. And then Jurgen Klopp will come and complain about a wet pitch, or that or Chelsea managers can get all the signings that they want, and do it in a bit of a jibe way. But the thing is, though, Jurgen, as much as I appreciate you probably don't get all your resources, the comments you say in your press conferences say otherwise. When you say you're happy with midfielders that you've got, and some of those midfielders are Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, who are never available, then that's a problem. Even if you are just being sound with the media and you don't want the media to know about any potential beef in the club, which I respect, people are going to still use them words and try and twist them in their own way. So that's why Jurgen's got to be understanding of the misconception. Now, listen, I don't think Jurgen cares that we all think he's a bit of a moaner. I think we can all say that he's a moaner without it taken away from his actual legacy. But I do wish it was one thing of his game that he eradicated a little bit more and just didn't do as much of. I wish he stayed strong in interviews. I wish he was a true example of how fans should represent themselves as well. Whereas I don't think he does that sometimes. But he's also never claimed to be, to be the messiah of examples when it comes to living life and talking about football, I suppose. So let me know your thoughts of it, chat, because I really want to know, amidst all these Klopp conversations right now, is this a factor of his game which you're not liking? And is this something that's kind of frustrating as it's putting a lot of unneeded things on the club? The Caicedo thing became more bantery because Jurgen Klopp came out and spoke about it. The jibe at Chelsea and Newcastle, it's now making other Premier League fans not like him, which I don't think we should care about, and I don't think Jurgen Klopp should care about. There's Premier League fans who don't like me. I'm still going to come on YouTube and talk about YouTube videos, or talk about football on YouTube videos. You should never let someone's perception of you cloud who you are as a person. However, there is still things where you think, if a family member says something, you might not agree with it. So you're not going to say this and don't say this, but you're going to advise them maybe that's not the best way to say it. If you've got a point, maybe deliver it in a bit of a better way next time. That's all I'm saying, but who am I to listen to? You know what I'm saying? That's just my opinion on it all. But I just seen Jurgen Klopp getting a bit more emotional. And I think this can be a good thing or a bad thing. I think it can be used for good if we provide him the resources. And I think a young, new project is something that Jurgen Klopp can definitely thrive off. So great in that aspect. It can be used for good, but then it can also be used for bad if he continues to not get the resources, which in turn leads to more complaints, unnecessary complaints, which in the short term can be very, very detrimental, and then can start to have some very uncomfortable conversations about his position at the football club. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I hope that made sense. I thought it all compact together really well, and I'm really intrigued to know what you all say in the comments down below. Smash a like only if you enjoy. If you don't enjoy, you don't have to smash a like. And by the way, I wouldn't expect you to. I would love it because I love constructive feedback. I think smashing a like or a dislike and being constructive in the comments down below is always good. Some people say I'm too negative. Let me know, am I too negative? Much love to you guys. Much love to you and your mothers. And I'll see you all in a bizzle. Peace.